Hey everyone, talking about 8 ways that fragrance can help with mental health. Yeah, just gonna kind of jump in. I mean, it seems like kind of a funny subject to do a video on, but at the same time, I think that anyone watching this has probably realized as you've kind of fallen into the rabbit hole of fragrance that it really can just change your mood and become such an obsession and a lot of fun. So, yeah, no particular order. Should I say the obligatory? This is not a substitute for seeing a psychiatrist or a therapist. But I don't know, fragrance can be pretty magic. So, one, confidence. This is just without a doubt something that I think everybody who's into fragrance can find something, whether you found it yet or not, that really just gives you that confident feeling to put on. Ideally, multiple, and then you end up with a whole collection and all this stuff. But it can be the difference between just kind of like, same with clothing for that matter. It's a very similar thing with a fragrance where it's like you put on this thing that where you otherwise would have just felt like whatever, and then you suddenly feel like, oh, I'm giving off this vibe that I want to give off. I say this like I'm wearing some like Armani suit or something. I'm not talking about clothing I'm wearing right now, but yeah, or just like a fragrance that you put on, and it can make you confident in a couple different ways. It can make you feel like more attractive and sexy if you're going on a date, and that level of confidence can also help the date go well and stuff. Versus like if you're acting really kind of, I don't want to say meek because that implies that someone should be like super bro-ish or whatever, whatever equivalent of that would be, but just kind of like helps you just feel more confident and be yourself and kind of come out of your shell more. It's almost like you have this like superhero cape or armor on, or like a job interview. I have a separate video that I'll link in the description of fragrances to wear to a job interview. I don't recommend high projecting ones because that could backfire, but just the point being, there's so many different situations where you could just get a special kind of confidence from selecting the right fragrance for that, and you spray it and it's just like, yes, I feel good about myself. Even if you are really having like a bad mental health day and you just feel really low self-esteem, at least that's one thing that in some small way can kind of boost it a little bit. Two, making a stressful job feel a bit more worth it. Not saying it's going to change your life in the sense of like, oh, I hated this job and I hated my boss and now I love it or something. But when you have something that gives you so much joy to spend your money on, which of course everybody does in some way or another, but oftentimes it's kind of like just getting by, trying to save, having trouble with that, whatever. Like you're not going on vacation usually every single week or always doing these crazy activities. But when you know, like, okay, because you can get a pretty good, even for like $30, you can get a pretty good fragrance that could potentially last you even like a year, 2 years or something if you don't go crazy spraying it. And that can feel so much more worth it, at least for me. I know, if there's a work stress situation, and then you just remind yourself, like, okay, with the money that I'm getting from sitting in, dealing with this meeting, dealing with these customers today and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to get this bottle with it. So it takes off just like a tiny bit of edge if you can remind yourself of that, of why you're dealing with those situations, and just like, okay, it feels a little bit more worth it because you're getting the money for the fragrance. Three, having things to look forward to. And I mean this on a couple levels with big and small. In terms of big, like or sort of big, I guess, would be like finding your next full bottle worthy fragrance. I know for me, that's just like, oh, every time I'm sampling something, it's just like, is this going to be it? Is this going to be it? Like always looking forward to that hunt. And then when you order a bottle, being excited for it to get there and whatnot. But also just on a much more micro everyday level, kind of like with the first one, even when just nothing is going right that day, you feel like there's nothing coming up to look forward to, like you don't have any plans, whatever's going on. One thing that you can look forward to is what fragrance you're going to wear that day and when you're going to wear it, and if you're going to layer it with anything. Just basically like, yeah, that's something that every single day you can do that's not like brushing your teeth or something boring, but something that's lively and exciting and, yeah, can mix things up a little bit. And say you're falling asleep the night before, you could even think about it like that. Like, ooh, I wonder what, I mean, that may sound ridiculous if you're not a frag head, so to speak, but for me, I really do think about that sometimes. Like, ooh, I'm going to wear this tomorrow or something. Four, this is definitely going to be a bit more of an unconventional one that I have never seen anybody connect to fragrance, not saying no one has, but I haven't seen it. Adapting to seasonal depression or other weather-related stress. Ironically, for me, it's the opposite. Even though I do get seasonal affective depression or whatever it's called, where it's like during the winter and cold months, it's weird because that's like my favorite season, but I do really get hit by that pretty hard when it's like it gets so gloomy and stuff like that. Despite liking that weather, there's chemical reaction, I don't know, that happens like that for me. But what I really, really just dread actually is when it gets hot again, because I can't stand hot weather, which I live in Los Angeles, so that's not the best place to live for that. But the one thing that I've found that has really made me feel more like, yay, or whatever, like about that is thinking like, okay, well, I get to start using those warm weather fragrances, because some fragrances that are, in this case for warm weather, do not hit the same when it's cold weather. They just fall flat, or even worse, the reverse. Really heavy, thick fragrances, you could really be in for a headache, or just not a good time if you wear that during hot weather. So whether it's normally the cold weather that you dread, or the hot weather time of the year, or day, if it really mixes up a lot where you live, that is something that can help you kind of like, okay, well, that takes a bit off the edge. Like, at least that's something that you really can look forward to about that. Because, yeah, like, even though I get hit by that in winter, there's also, at least it's like Christmas, like time off from work, like just all this other good stuff is happening then. But in summer, it's just always like, ugh, it's going to be so hot and just like, ugh, I don't want to deal with that. But then I just like, again, remember, okay, well, I can wear Fico di Amalfi, one of my favorite warm weather fragrances. Like, yes, oh, I can't wait for that. Like, okay, so that's something that's really going to make it good when that comes around. 5, socializing or interacting with others in the fragrance community. And I don't even mean in person. I mean, I have talked to so many people, met so many people through fragrance. Never once has any of that so far been in person. It's all been online. But then it's like, once you start talking to people, you kind of talk to them more and more, and get to know each other and have more conversations that maybe start with fragrance related stuff but can end up actually being friends with people. And it's just such a great way to, as with any kind of hobby, I guess, meet people, but especially in a way that does not have to be in person, because a lot of hobbies are kind of centered around certain in-person things. And especially after you turn, say, 30, and for many people younger even, including me for that matter, it can be really hard to make new friends, because it's like a lot of your friends maybe were people you met in school, or if you went to college, which I guess also counts as school, or, you know, certain workplaces and things like that, that once you kind of hit a certain age, there's just a lot less opportunity for the most part to be meeting new people, especially meeting them in a way where you'd have enough exposure on an ongoing basis to actually like get to know them and see if, you know, if you end up being friends with them. But this fragrance has totally changed that for me. I've like made legit new friends through it. I've talked to so many interesting and fun people and stuff like that through it. And not just from starting a YouTube, because obviously not everybody has a YouTube channel, though you could, but just from even like buying and selling fragrance samples on Reddit, or just posting in the Reddit fragrance community and just places like that. It really could change your social life, even, you know, without even having to leave the house, like to be interacting with others and making new friends and just being passionate about the subject in general. 6, a reminder that nothing is permanent. And I mean that in a couple of different ways, but in terms of like fragrance, as we all know, people complain about it enough. Longevity is a big hot topic with fragrance. Like, it doesn't last long enough, or this or that, or even the ones that do last. It's going to go away at some point. No fragrance lasts for years on your skin, even if you never took a shower or whatever. So it's a good reminder to live in the moment and just kind of like be in that exact moment and appreciate stuff while it's there, and also recognize to, you know, it's gonna pass. And that also applies to anything stressful or bad in your life, that it's like, okay, be in that moment while it's there and know that it is going to pass and everything's just going to keep going, and just stay mindful and in the moment. And just like with fragrance, it comes, you can enjoy it while it's there and then let it go, and then you're on to the next thing, even if that's just respraying the same thing. But yep, helping to stay in the moment. 7, it can on one hand help you fall asleep, and it can also make you feel more alert. So some people don't wear fragrance to sleep, some do. There's only one fragrance that I will wear to sleep, which is my favorite signature scent, Aromi Sexy Man, embarrassing title, but their solid cologne version, I just love it. I find it so, it's like invigorating and relaxing somehow, but I'm so used to wearing it to sleep that now it just calms me down when I put it on and stuff like that. But for a lot of people, they like a lavender one, and there is like a lavender spray that I like to put like on the comforter or whatever and things like that. And I'd love to find like a wearable lavender one that I liked enough to and work to wear to bed. For me, I like solid cologne styles to wear to bed more rather than like a spray. But yeah, it can help you sleep to get ones like that, either from a scientific perspective, like how lavender really does have properties like that, or just one that calms you down. And on the other hand, I made the mistake of one of my favorite coffee fragrances, is probably my number one, Cup of Joe by Bath Sabbath. I was like testing some on it, or I was just like really excited, kind of late afternoon or something, and I put some on my skin, and I was up like all night because even after I washed my hands, I didn't scrub it that much, but I, washed my hands like normal. I think I maybe even took a shower, but it was just like really hung on until like the next morning. And that for sure woke me up. So then it was annoying at the time, but it also made me realize like, oh yeah, I can use that in the mornings when I'm just really like just feeling sluggish or whatever, to apply some of that. It doesn't have to be a coffee one. That one actually happens to have like real coffee in it and stuff. Anything. It can just be a favorite one that makes you feel particularly energetic. But again, it really can be one that has like chemical properties that do make you feel more alert. So yeah, it can help you both drift off to sleep and also get some more energy in the morning. And also because you're just like, okay, that's a reason to kind of get up and get out of bed. Like, oh, I get to go put fragrance on or something. And 8, it can motivate you to either get out of the house or to just like kind of feel more okay with it because you want other people to smell you and like an occasion to go wear fragrance. For example, when people are dealing with really severe clinical depression, or even doesn't even have to be the most severe kind, sometimes even just everyday stuff like going to the grocery store can feel really daunting or just like so hard to find the motivation for. So I'm not saying that, again, this is going to be the same as being on like a really high dose of an antidepressant that's perfect for you, or behavioral therapy, or just like all these other things, but this is something that can truly help. And I've seen it firsthand and stuff if I'm just really, like a really demotivated mood or something. And I know I have to run an errand or something, then it's like, oh wait, ooh, I get to choose a fragrance, and knowing that people will like smell you out and about and just gets you out and a little bit closer to doing that. So yeah, these are 8 reasons that I legitimately do think can help, even if it's just a little bit, and especially when you add them all up. I know for sure for me, fragrance has like really drastically changed my life for the better in terms of just like day-to-day happiness and fun and stuff to look forward to and enjoyment. So I'd love to hear from anybody else like how it's kind of helped with you. But yeah, hope this was helpful or at least interesting.